The road stretched before me like a black ribbon stitched into the fabric of America, endless and unbroken. Some people say the highway hums a lullaby, but for me it has always been a restless song, one that never lets you sleep too long, never lets your mind drift too far from the weight of the miles. My name's Michael Turner, and for the last 12 years, I've lived more on the asphalt than under a roof. To most folks, a trucker's just a man behind a wheel, hauling freight from one city to another. But to me, this truck, this beast of steel and chrome, isn't just a machine. It's my partner, my prison, and sometimes my only friend. Still remember the first time I climbed into this cab. She was a Peterbilt 379. Red paint shining under the Texas sun, chrome mirrors so polished you could see your whole life staring back at you. That day, I thought I had found freedom. Open skies, wide roads, and no one to tell me when to sleep or when to wake. Just me, the engine's growl, and the promise of tomorrow's paycheck. But what no one tells you is that freedom has a price. And some nights, when the road feels too long and the silence too heavy, you start to wonder if the price is worth paying. The night I'm talking about, the one that almost made me quit trucking, began like any other. I had just crossed out of Oklahoma, heading west toward New Mexico. The sky was smeared with gray clouds, low and heavy, like they were pressing down on the world. The radio played static more than music, and my thermos of coffee had gone cold, hours ago. Out there, the road feels like an ocean. The yellow lines are waves rising and falling beneath your headlights, carrying you into a darkness that has no shore. It's beautiful in a way, but also lonely. And loneliness, that's the heaviest cargo a trucker ever carries. I passed by small towns with glowing diner signs and gas stations, places where families sat down for supper, where laughter spilled out of warm windows. And each time I passed one, I felt like a ghost drifting by, close enough to see, but never close enough to touch. You see, truckers like me don't just carry freight. We carry memories. Some good, some not so good. And when you're alone behind the wheel for 12, 14, sometimes 16 hours, those memories sit in the passenger seat, staring at you, whispering to you. For me, it was the memory of my little girl Emily waving at me from the porch the day I left for my first long-haul run. She was only 5, blonde curls bouncing as she shouted, "Bring me back something, Daddy!" I smiled, promised her I would, and drove off thinking I was building a better future. But futures don't come wrapped in promises. They come in choices. And each mile I drove was a mile farther from the life I was supposed to be living with her. That night, as the wipers dragged across the windshield and the rain began to fall, I started asking myself questions I had buried for years. Why am I still out here? Why am I missing birthdays, school plays, and quiet Sunday mornings? When did the road stop feeling like freedom and start feeling like chains? Every trucker has a breaking point. Mine was creeping closer with every mile marker that passed in the dark. I tightened my grip on the wheel, feeling the leather worn smooth by years of calloused hands. The engine's hum rattled in my chest, steady but tired, like it was carrying the same weight I was. I thought about pulling over at the next truck stop, calling dispatch, and saying the words I'd never dared to say. I quit, but here's the thing. Quitting isn't just about leaving a job. For truckers like me, it feels like leaving behind a piece of who you are. The road carves itself into your bones, shapes the way you think, the way you see the world. To walk away is to lose more than a paycheck. It's to lose a part of yourself. And yet, as the rain came harder and my headlights cut tunnels through the storm, I couldn't shake the thought. I couldn't shake the feeling that maybe the road had taken more from me than it had ever given back. That night was the beginning. The beginning of the moment I almost gave it all up. The beginning of the story I'm about to tell you. Because sometimes the hardest part of being a trucker isn't the miles, the weather, or the weight of the load. Sometimes the hardest part is simply holding on, when every part of you wants to let go. The storm had thinned by dawn, but the heaviness inside me hadn't lifted. My Peterbilt roared down I-40, tires hissing over wet pavement, the horizon stretching pale and endless. The sky was streaked with dull orange, a sunrise that looked tired before it even began. Almost like me. People think truckers are built tough, like the machines we drive. And sure, the calluses on my hands tell one story. But the truth lives deeper. Beneath every mile is a dream. Beneath every paycheck is a reason. And beneath every tired smile is a price we've paid in silence. For me, that dream began when I was a kid, sitting on the porch with my dad. He was a trucker too. I'd watch his rig roll back into our dusty Oklahoma town after weeks on the road. He'd climb down, looking worn but proud, his boots heavy, his arms carrying more than just the weight of the haul. He carried stories. Stories of faraway cities, mountains taller than dreams, highways that ran longer than hope itself. I wanted that life. I wanted the open road, the freedom, the legend of it all, and for a while, it felt exactly like that. Freedom. But here's the part no one tells you when you dream of trucking. Freedom has sharp edges. You get the open skies, yes. You get to watch sunsets that could make a poet weep. You get to see America not from postcards, but from the pavement up. But every sunrise you witness alone, every sunset you watch through a windshield, you're reminded of what you left behind to be there. For me, it was Emily. She was the reason I pushed so hard. Every mile, every sleepless night in the cab, every ache in my back from loading and unloading, it was all so I could send money home. I told myself I was building her future, buying her choices I never had. But the irony? While I was out building her future, I was missing her present. I remember one night, parked at a rest stop in Nevada. I had just finished fueling and sat alone, with a plastic container of reheated diner food. My phone buzzed with a video message. It was Emily, sitting cross-legged on the living room floor, her school projects spread around her. She was smiling, missing one front tooth, waving at the camera. "Daddy, look, I made a solar system. Do you like it?" Her planets were made of painted foam balls, strung up on wires. They spun crooked, like the orbits had gone wild. She laughed, proud of her work, waiting for my reaction. But I wasn't there. I couldn't clap, couldn't help her glue Saturn's rings back in place. All I could do was watch her through a screen, whispering a soft, "That's beautiful, baby," into the silence of the cab. That moment stayed with me, because behind her smile, I saw the truth. She was learning to live without me there. Trucking teaches you about weight, not just the tonnage of your load, but the kind of weight you can't put on a scale. The weight of guilt, the weight of absence, the weight of knowing you chose the road over the moments that mattered, and that weight, mile after mile, starts to grind you down. I tried to drown it out with the radio, with truck stop coffee, with empty conversations with strangers, in line at diners, but when the engine's hum was the only sound left, those thoughts came back louder than ever. What am I really hauling? Freight or regrets? Still, I kept driving, because trucking is a strange kind of addiction. You hate it some days, love it others. You swear you'll quit when the miles get too heavy, but then a new stretch of highway unfolds before you, and it feels like the world is yours again. The road is a liar like that. It promises freedom, but it gives you solitude. It promises adventure, but it hands you routine. And it promises money, but it costs you time you can never earn back. One winter, I missed Emily's Christmas play. She was playing an angel. She had rehearsed for weeks, calling me on the road to sing her lines, asking if I'd be there. I promised I'd try. I really thought I could make it back. But the delivery got delayed, snowstorms pushed my schedule, and by the time I parked at home, the play was already over. Emily was asleep. On the kitchen table sat a small angel costume, glitter still clinging to the fabric. My wife told me she kept looking at the door, waiting for me. That night, I sat in the cab instead of the living room. I couldn't face the disappointment in her eyes the next morning. I stared at the dashboard lights, the gauges glowing faint blue, and I felt like a man who had sold his soul for diesel fuel. And yet, every time I thought of quitting, another thought stopped me. Who else will pay the bills? Who else will give Emily the life she deserves? That's the cruel part of it all. Truckers live in a world between worlds. We're part of every town we pass through, yet we belong to none. We know the curves of the highways better than the lines on our own hands, but sometimes forget the shape of our child's smile. We become shadows moving freight across America, visible only in rear-view mirrors. And me, I was getting tired of being a shadow. I loved the road, but I loved my daughter more. And I knew, sooner or later, I'd have to choose. That choice. That breaking point. It was closer than I realized, and when it came, it would test me in. Away no storm, no long haul, no sleepless night ever had. The storm passed, but something inside me hadn't. For weeks, I felt a heaviness that no amount of diesel or caffeine could shake. The road stretched on as it always did. But instead of freedom, it felt like a trap. I was heading north that night, cutting through the flat plains of Kansas, hauling a refrigerated load that had to make it to Chicago by morning. My logbook was tight, and dispatch had made it clear. Don't be late, Michael. The client's watching this one. Deadlines, miles, and silence. That's the trinity of a trucker's life. But on this night, something else weighed heavier than the freight strapped to my trailer. My phone buzzed on the dash. I glanced at it. A missed call. Emily. My heart sank. It was already late, close to midnight. I pulled into the next truck. Stop! Killed the engine, and called back. She answered on the second ring. Her voice was small, tired, but laced with something sharp. Disappointment. Daddy, you said you'd be here this weekend. I froze. My mind scrambled through the dates, the schedule, the delivery deadlines. She was right. I had promised her. School was having a father-daughter dance. She'd told me about it weeks ago, her voice bubbling with excitement. She had picked out a dress with her mom, even practiced a little twirl over the phone. I had said, "Don't worry, baby, I'll be there." But there I was, hundreds of miles away, surrounded by neon truck stoplights and the hiss of air brakes. "I'm sorry, sweetheart," I said, my voice breaking in the ways I tried to hide. I thought I could make it. I really did. There was silence on the other end. Then a whisper that cut deeper than any blade. "It's okay, Daddy. I'm used to it." Those words hit me harder than any sleepless night. harder than any storm I'd driven through. I'm used to it. That's when I realized. My daughter was learning to expect my absence. She was teaching herself to live without me. And that, more than anything, terrified me. I sat there in the dark cab, staring at my reflection in the windshield. My face looked older than I remembered, creased not just by age but by distance, by regret. The load didn't matter. The deadlines didn't matter. For the first time in my career, I didn't care if the client was angry or if dispatch yelled. All I cared about was the voice of a little girl who sounded like she had stopped believing in her dad. The conflict inside me boiled. Part of me screamed, "You can't quit now, Michael. The bills won't pay themselves. Emily needs the money for her future. You'll fail her worse if you walk away." But another part of me whispered, "What good is money if she grows up? Without you? What good is a future if she stops needing her father in the present?" I gripped the steering wheel so tight my knuckles turned white. My chest ached like the weight of the whole rig had shifted onto my heart. For the first time in years, I considered shutting it all down. Calling dispatch, telling them I was done. Done chasing miles, done missing moments, done being a ghost in my own daughter's life. But quitting isn't that simple, because trucking isn't just a job. It's an identity. When you've spent over a decade living by the hum of diesel and the rhythm of the highway, you start to wonder who you are without it. Who would I be if I wasn't a trucker? Could I even go home and just be a dad? Or had I already missed too much? That night, the highway felt different. Each mile marker I passed seemed to taunt me. The yellow lines blurred under the headlights, stretching like chains, pulling me farther from the life I wanted, from the man I wanted to be. The cab, once my sanctuary, felt like a cage. The dashboard lights glowed cold, mocking me. The hum of the engine was no longer a comfort, but a reminder of every mile I had chosen over my family. I turned off the radio, turned off the CB, and drove in silence. Just me and the storm inside my chest. By dawn, I reached the outskirts of Chicago, but I wasn't thinking about deliveries anymore. I was thinking about Emily's words. "It's okay, Daddy, I'm used to it." That was the moment that almost broke me. That was the night I almost pulled the rig into a rest area, called it quits, and never looked back. Because the truth was simple. I didn't want my daughter to get used to life without me. The Chicago skyline rose like steel teeth against the gray morning sky. I should have been thinking about the delivery, about the client waiting for their freight, but all I could hear were my daughter's words echoing through my head. "It's okay, Daddy. I'm used to it." That sentence sat in my chest heavier than any load I'd ever hauled. I dropped the trailer, signed the papers, and climbed back into the cab. Normally, finishing a run brought a sense of relief. This time, there was nothing but emptiness. I parked at a rest area just outside the Hood city. The world outside buzzed with early traffic, but in the stillness of my cab, it felt like I was standing at a crossroads far bigger than any intersection. I reached for my phone and opened the photo gallery. Picture after picture of Emily lit up. The screen, her first day of school, her birthday cake with crooked candles, the time she wore my oversized cap and said she wanted to drive trucks like Daddy. My throat tightened. Tears welled, but I blinked them back. I wasn't the kind of man who cried. Or at least, I hadn't been. But the road has a way of wearing down even the toughest steel, and that morning, I felt like rust. I stared at my hands on the wheel, calloused, cracked, aged beyond their years. These were the hands that had steered thousands of miles, lifted countless loads, fixed busted hoses on frozen nights. but they were also the hands that had missed holding my daughter's hand when she needed me. The guilt hit me like a collision. For years, I had told myself I was doing it all for her. For the house, for the clothes, for the savings account. But what if she didn't want the money? What if all she wanted was me? The thought of quitting burned in my chest. I imagined driving this rig back home, parking it for good, and walking through the front door like a man returning from war. I'd scoop Emily into my arms, tell her I was never leaving again. I'd trade in the open road for open mornings at the breakfast table, for laughter in the living room instead of static on the CB radio. For the first time, quitting didn't sound like failure. It sounded like redemption. But then came the other voice, the practical one. How will you pay the bills, Michael? Who's going to put food on the table? What about health insurance, college, the mortgage? You think you can just walk away from all that? I slam my fist against the wheel, torn between two worlds. Freedom on one side, family on the other. Duty pulling me one way, love pulling me the other. The road roared outside, trucks thundering past, each one a reminder of the life I'd built and the chains I couldn't break. I didn't realize my phone had slipped from my lap until it buzzed. Another message. This time, it wasn't Emily. It was my wife. A picture popped up on the screen. Emily, dressed in her father-daughter dance outfit. A soft blue dress with tiny sparkles, her hair tied up in curls. She stood in the living room, smiling at the camera. But her eyes told a different story. The caption was short. She really wanted you here. I couldn't breathe. The guilt was crushing, unbearable. I dropped my head against the steering wheel, my shoulders shaking. The cab that had been my fortress suddenly felt like a coffin. Right then, something inside me snapped. Not in anger, not in despair, but in clarity. For years, I had been chasing miles, thinking the road was the only way to prove my worth as a father. But worth isn't measured in paychecks or in loads delivered. It's measured in presence, in showing up, in being there when your child looks for you in the crowd. And for the first time in my career, I knew the road wasn't enough. I put the keys in my pocket and climbed out of the cab. The cold Chicago wind slapped my face, and it felt like waking up from a long, heavy sleep. I walked across the rest area lot, my boots crunching against gravel, my heart pounding like the rumble of an idling engine. I pulled out my phone, dialed, dispatch, and waited. The line clicked. Turner, you're clear for the next load. Got a run heading south. I cut them off. My voice was steady, but my hands trembled. Not this time. Silence then. What do you mean, not this time? I swallowed hard. I mean, I'm done. At least for now. I need to go home. The dispatcher sighed, muttered something about contracts and schedules, but I didn't care. For once, their words didn't matter. The road didn't matter. Only Emily did. That was the turning point. I didn't quit trucking forever, but that day, I quit putting the road before my family. I quit pretending miles could replace moments. I quit lying to myself that money was more important than memories. Because when my little girl looked at me one day and said, "I'm used to it," I realized I couldn't let her grow up used to a life without her father. The drive home felt different. For once, I wasn't chasing miles. I wasn't racing the clock, and I wasn't measuring my worth in fuel receipts or logbook entries. I was driving for something bigger, something that couldn't be written on a bill of lading or stamped on a shipping manifest. I was driving home to my daughter. The miles rolled by like falling dominoes. Every exit sign, every town I passed, carried me closer to her. And though I had driven those highways countless times before, they had never looked so alive. The trees leaned in like old friends cheering me on. The sky stretched wide with promise, and the hum of the engine felt less like a burden and more like a song. When I finally pulled into our driveway, the truck's brakes hissed, releasing not just air but the weight I'd been carrying for years. The porch light glowed. The door swung open, and there she was, Emily. She ran down the steps, her blue dress still crumpled from the dance, her curls bouncing as she sprinted toward me, her small arms wrapped around my waist before I even made it down from the cab. "Daddy, you're home!" she shouted, her voice bright, forgiving, full of the love only a child can give. I knelt down, holding her as tight as I could. For the first time in years, I didn't smell diesel or asphalt. I smelled home. The faint scent of her shampoo, the warmth of her laughter, the heartbeat of the life I had nearly missed. Inside, my wife looked at me with tired eyes but a soft smile. She had carried more than her share of the load all these years, raising Emily while I chased the road. I took her hand and whispered the words I should have said long ago. "I'm sorry. I'm done missing life. I'll still drive, but not like before. Not at the cost of us." She nodded. She didn't need a speech. She just needed proof. Proof that I would finally choose them. That weekend, I didn't touch the truck. I didn't check the dispatch calls. Instead, I sat in a school gym decorated with paper stars and cheap string lights, holding my daughter's hand as we danced. Her small feet stood on mine as we swayed clumsily to the music. She laughed, looking up at me with eyes that no longer carried disappointment. In that moment, I knew I had made the right choice. I hadn't quit trucking, but I had quit letting it take more than it deserved. Since then, I still drive. The road is in my blood, and I don't think I could ever leave it behind completely, but now I choose my hauls differently. I take fewer long runs, and I make sure home isn't just a place I visit between trips, but the center of my life. The balance isn't perfect, but it's better. And every time Emily hugs me before I leave, she no longer says, "I'm used to it." Instead, she says, "See you soon, Daddy." And she believes it. Life will always demand sacrifices. For truckers, the road tests us more than most. It takes our time, our energy, our presence. But here's the truth I learned. Money can build a house, but presence builds a home. Miles can put food on the table, but moments put love in the heart. Sacrifice means nothing if it costs the very people you're sacrificing for. The highway is long, endless, and beautiful, but it should never replace the short, priceless years we get with our loved ones. If you've listened to this story, let it be a reminder. Whether you're a trucker or not, don't let the grind of life make you a stranger to the ones who matter most. Work is important. Providing is noble. But love is the only cargo that truly lasts. So, if you have someone waiting for you, a daughter, a son, a partner, a parent, a friend, don't just tell them you love them. Show up. Be there. Dance with them. Laugh with them. Hold them close. Because one day, the miles will end, the engines will quiet, and the only thing left will be the memories you made along the way. And if this story touched your heart, I'd love to hear your thoughts. Drop a comment below. Tell me about the people you're driving for or the sacrifices you've made. If you felt this journey was worth the ride, hit that like button. It means more than you know. And if you want more stories from the open road, true, human stories from truckers, across America. Don't forget to subscribe, because out here, every mile tells a story.